So if you're one that has premonitions come up, the biggest thing is to learn to work with them and journal them so that you can document what's accurate and inaccurate and where the inaccuracies come from. This is part of your soul growth and your soul knowing and who you are. Someone recently asked me, how do I tell the difference between a premonition and an actual fear? This was a great question. And I said to them, that's a great question. And I said, there's several things I would do. One is I would really have a solid foundation of knowing thyself. You need to know thyself. This is like age old, right? Because then you can understand where your ego has a vested interest in certain answers and particular slants. The other thing is when you get information as content, you can do what's called throwing light at the information and holding it up to the highest realms to say, is this a fear or am I getting a premonition here? Also, when you journal and work with premonitions, you can notice which ones are accurate hits and which ones are misses. And what your percentage batting average is, really. So I would always encourage people that feel that they work with premonitions to document them. Sometimes they don't show up until a year later or whatever. You know, also, what's the premonition about? Is it a world event that you're having a premonition on? And so I would encourage people to actually enter into the experience. Maybe put your hands on your heart. I'm always big on that, making the heartfelt connection to the highest truth, setting the intention to get the highest truth in the experience, and asking, what am I to do with this information? You know, throw light. Is it real? Is it really happening? And then should I do anything? A lot of times we are called to prayer or holding the person or the space in the space of light and love, or shifting people's consciousness by the energy of prayer, holding up the experience for the greater good. I think this is especially helpful at times like these, and people are kind of nervous about the future or their future, or maybe they're not nervous or whatever, and they're just dappling in like, I'm getting these hits or these feelings or these premonitions, and you know, some of them pan out, some of them don't. When I used to do work as a medium, delivering messages for people, I saw potential futures a lot. And I would always tell them this, listen, this is a potential future, but you have free will. So you can do whatever you want with it, right? And so are those premonitions? Yeah, they are. I mean, you could go into the Akashic records. We did that meditation a while back, and that series a while back, and look to see, what does the future hold? What's the future potential? Now, when I delivered it as content information when reading souls, I had worked with that vibration for a very long time so that I knew the vibration of truth. But you also have to realize where you're sourcing your information. You know, there's this incredible thing, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you're doing a read on someone else, you have to watch out that you're not picking up projections or wishes, like what their desires are or what their fears are, and deliver them as truth of what's yet to come, because then they'll co-create that future, right? Thinking they're stuck in it. And we all have free will, so we can always change some things in our life, I believe, from my experience. But when it comes to your own, and you're having a vision or an experience or a dream or something that comes to you, I would first of all ascertain, where were you? What space were you in when that information came? You know, if it was a dream, was it just mental garbage that's coming out in this form? Are you worried about something in the future? Have you dramatized something that's coming up? Are you hyper-focused in certain areas that, you know, you have no control over? Like, I would really want you to look at the content, the psychological content around the arena of the message, right? It will help you understand it in greater detail, in my experience. And so when people, you know, ask me questions like that, I often say, well, what do you think? Because I don't want to rob their power. I want to empower them to kind of take a moment, close their eyes, go inside, bring that, whatever it was, back up into their mental landscape to say, what can I do with this information? Where did it come from? Did it come from inside of me? Is it something I'm kind of unnerved about on the planet or in my life anyway? And so I've got this ego attachment to it anyway. And so, maybe I'm mingling my own fears with this premonition, or this worry about the future. So oftentimes I tell people to hold the experience or the vision or the wisdom that's coming to them up to source energy, up to the highest light, and say, is this of truth? Is this of the highest truth? And what am I supposed to do with this information? Sometimes we are called to prayer. Sometimes we are called to give warning or, mention it to someone. If it's someone that you know or has to do with someone other than yourself, maybe you need to change direction. But all of the giving information outside of ourself, I always tell people, proceed with caution. If you're saying, I'm getting this premonition, that rah, 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 they have free will too, and ultimately need to make their own decisions. When I recently went to parts of Africa, there were people on the group that were really worried. They were really nervous that it was going to be tricky territory. And I was like, you know what, that's your fears. I'm going to go higher to source energy, and I'm going to have a chat. And I was like, should I be worried about this trip? Should I not go on this trip? Should I cancel this trip? Should I postpone this trip? What should happen? And I just knew. I knew in my bones, like, no, this is their shit. This is not your stuff, Constance. So you don't need to worry about this. And furthermore, don't worry about this, and don't bring it around with you to the territories that you're traveling into, because then you're going to be carrying that vibration through a space that doesn't deserve it. And the trip was fine and everything was fine. And I just had to stay away from those people that were, kind of nervous and bringing their fears through the journey, because it would upset my vibe. It really would. So I think it's a lot of things. I think it's consider the source. I think what's going on in your life when you're having some kind of a premonition that does seem to set you back or have you wonder if it's actually a fear-based experience. And then when you source truth and are asking, should I be concerned about this? And if you get a no, then maybe you should ask, then why is it coming up? And then continue the dialogue there, right? As to what is this about? And why am I aggravated or concerned or worried or pulling this fear-based experience towards me? Like, what's going on is there something off in a chakra? Is there something off in my life? Is this a pattern from the past history? Is it a core wound? Is it a family dynamic? Worry, worry, worry. I came from a family of worry, worry, worry. Oh my gosh. Kind of worry about the worst, but pray for the best. And, that's not always a good service. Project outward positivity. That's better. Stoked, excited, moving forward, with great love, knowing that if something comes up, you'll be diverted. You'll know which way to go. You'll know which way to turn. It'll happen. So I thought that was a great question. I hope what I've offered you now is helpful in some way or another. And then if you have some skills and tools, definitely share them back. I think that there's as many answers as there are, almost as there are people. Almost as there are people. So if you're one that has premonitions come up, the biggest thing is to learn to work with them and journal them so that you can document what's accurate and inaccurate and where the inaccuracies come from. This is part of your soul growth and your soul knowing and who you are, tuning into your greatest potential. And I believe in you. I believe in you. Legally speaking, this podcast is presented solely for educational, spiritual, and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for medical diagnosis, treatment, or the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat a health problem or condition. Always check with your doctor. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed this episode with Constance Messmer, We'd like to encourage you to continue your spiritual journey with this next episode.